Thank you to our sponsors, all of our sponsors today. Without them, we couldn't have this wonderful event for you all. I'm going to introduce our presenter, Cindy McClure, MCR and GCP. Hi, Cindy. She's with Grossmueller's Design Consultants, Inc. And today she's going to be speaking on NKBA's kitchen planning guidelines. So I'm going to stop share my screen. And Cindy, you're going to just take Q&A throughout, or would you like that at the end of your presentation?
So actually, I always like it to be more of a discussion. If you've got a question on a slide, please, please, please feel free to interrupt me. I have a lot of slides, so I'm going to, and it's the time frame that I'm used to for this presentation. So there will be some that I skip or just glide through. But please either ask and interrupt, and if you're not comfortable interrupting and you want to put a question in the chat window, I will ask Debbie to interrupt me with that question just so that I can address it as we go through.
Sounds wonderful. All right, I'm going to stop share and let you roll.
Excellent. Let's get it to the big screen. There we go. Hi everybody, I'm Cindy McClure. Today we're going to talk about kitchen planning. These are guidelines that are set straight from the NKBA. They were copied from their guidebook with their permission. And so they are based on codes and access standards to make kitchens more functional and to avoid a lot of common mistakes. So our course objectives today are that you'll be able to identify what some of the codes are for 2015 IRC. I know some of our local jurisdictions are on later codes than this. As far as I know, NKBA hasn't updated them for higher codes, but I don't think there's a lot that is going to conflict with these. The access standards, kitchen guidelines that are established by them, and then recognize the importance of them. Those of us that have done remodeling for long enough know that there's a lot of importance as to why would we have standards. Makes perfect sense to have an outlet in the middle of a sink. I don't know how many times, you know, I've walked into clients' homes and they've got a situation like down here at the bottom left, where you've got, you know, some kind of appliance that's interfering with another appliance. You can't even get them open. I myself have made the mistake over on the bottom right-hand side early on in putting hardware on that you can't open. So little things like that. This happens frequently when we don't plan for room at the top, or we don't even measure to where sprinklers might be in. And how many of us have seen where an oven appliance or the oven door comes down and it scrapes either on the cabinet or the refrigerator next to it. So a lot of fun reasons. This is why we came up with these standards, is to try to avoid these mistakes. There's no sense in making them twice. And if we can share that with others, and so that they don't have to make the mistakes and cost our clients some money or us, that would be really great. As I said, you know, before, the reason to provide standards is so that we've got good planning practices, to consider the range, consider the needs of a range of different users. So some of them are based on universal design, some of them are based on people that have other handicaps, and so they just make good design overall. All right, so just to warn you guys that some of this is somewhat bland because they are standards. There's not a lot of pretty pictures. These are technical. So again, if you've got questions, please interrupt. Guideline number 1 talks about door and entry. So as you enter into a space, what they're saying here with this is that as a minimum, we need a 32-inch door. When you're talking about access standards, so somebody in a wheelchair or somebody using a walker, what you want to have is in the direction of the swing. So as you're walking into a space, you need to have at least 18 inches on the swing side of it, so that if the wheelchair was coming from this side, they'd be able to grab the knob, open the door, and then be able to go through. As a clear opening, you need at least 34 inches. It's better if you can do 36, as we can see here. And we want to make sure that anything that is in the way, if it's 36 inches here, if you've got a cabinet or a counter or even a wall cabinet that's 24 inches deep, you make sure that door is 36 in the direction of the travel. Second one talks about door interference. So a lot of times we have the refrigerator that's tucked behind a door. Most of us end up just taking this door out, but a lot of the homes that were designed much earlier had a door that closed off the kitchen. It's still not a great idea to put the refrigerator right here because then the door opens into the doorway. So avoid that when we can. When planning islands, a lot of times we've got a dishwasher. We want to make sure that if there is a range, in this case, it would be a slide in, but if you've got a range here, you're not having the oven door when it's open interfere with the dishwasher door when it's down. It's hard enough when you've got the doors, one of the doors down to try to work around it. So if we can, we try to plan without having them interfere and so that you can maneuver around it. The last picture over here, I think I made a mistake and left that that access standard on there because there isn't a door interference in this one. So forgive me on that. Guideline number 3 talks about our work triangle. So the distance between them. They would like us, or one of the things we should consider is that no single leg of a work triangle. And let's go back for a second and define what the work triangle is. The work triangle are the 3 most important or the 3 most used appliances or fixtures in the kitchen. The first being the sink, we're all standing at the sink. The second being refrigeration, and the third being the cooking surface. This is usually the range top or cooktop. Could be an oven, but it's basically the cooking surface, the horizontal surface. And so that's what we consider the work triangle. When we take these distances, we're measuring them from the center of each one of the appliances. So you can see over in the diagram in the upper right-hand corner that we're going from the middle of them. And we would like no single leg to be shorter than 4 feet. So give yourself some room there, and no longer than 9 feet. Sum of any of the 3 sides, so 1, 2, and 3, we want to keep that within 26 feet max. All right, talking about distance between work centers still, we would like to plan it where if we've got an island or if we've got a counter that comes in, sometimes this happens with peninsulas, is that none of these legs, when you're going directly from the center of appliance to the center of appliance to the center of appliance or fixture, I think is more of a fixture, you're not hitting the corner of an island here. So you want to try to avoid that when possible, and you're shooting a straight line to any one of those. All right, number 4, separating the work centers. When we're planning kitchens, we try to not put a full height, full depth, tall obstacle in a placement that would separate 2 of the primary work centers. So in our examples that are shown here, we're using the sink and the cooktop as our primary work centers. And so we're trying not to put something tall in the middle of it. It breaks it up. You have no way to come around the corners here. They do allow, or they do say that the recommendation is that if you do something tall and recess it into a corner like this, that's shown on the right-hand side, that's acceptable because you can actually have this open and still move around it. I can't say that I've ever done one where we've recessed this into a corner and it looks appropriate. So it's not, my personal feeling is that you can avoid putting anything that's a full height, full depth, or tall obstacle, put them at the end of the runs rather than in the middle. Number 5, the workflow, the work triangle, traffic. So we use a term called protecting the chef. I think some of you guys do too. I know from some of the names I saw that were up before, I'm familiar with you guys. So when we protect the chef, what we mean is that we don't want to have a traffic flow or traffic pattern come through that work triangle, if at all possible. So here we've got a diagram of our work triangle that goes from the sink to the refrigeration to the cooking surface, and it's on one side of the island so that the main traffic flow around the kitchen does not interfere with that chef. So the chef is protected from the rest of the people that would be in the kitchen, or from any traffic pattern that kind of goes through. Guideline number 6, work aisles. This will snag you if you go smaller than these, so just be mindful. When we talk about work aisles, we're talking about the distances between the countertop surfaces, not between the cabinet surfaces. We lose an inch when we talk about countertops. They usually overhang 1 inch to 1.5 inches. So we're shooting to go from the countertop edges. The minimum for a one cook is 42 inches. That's so that if you've got a dishwasher door that's down, someone would still be able to walk around it, things like that. If you've got two chefs that are in here, in the middle diagram, we'd really rather keep it at 48. The challenge with you going anything smaller than 42 is that you really can't get around anything when a drawer is open or a door is open and a rollout shelf is pulled out. Again, a dishwasher door is down, something like that. When we're talking about access standards, we want to make sure that you have either a clear floor space in front of the appliance that's 30 by 48, or in a U-shaped kitchen application, you've got a 60-inch clearance. That's a turning radius for a wheelchair. Walkways. There's a couple of slides on walkways. So when we're talking about walkways, we go back to where the first one where we had door entries, where it said they wanted a minimum of 32 inches. The door itself can be 32. We still want to make sure we've got 36 between the edge of the counter and any wall or any other counter that's next to it. And that walkway space through here should be a minimum of 36. Remember, as we go through the kitchen here, we're going to keep this at 42 or 48 in these two directions. If you're dealing with access standards, you want them to be a minimum of 42. You can do 36 in one direction, but if you've got one where you're turning, it's better to keep it at 42. Traffic clearances, and this is we've all been in kitchens where we've got a peninsula or an island or something where we're doing a walkway space or not behind. And so if you've got a peninsula set up like the diagram that's all the way on the left, for somebody to be able to be sitting at the peninsula and somebody else to be able to walk behind, you need at least 32 inches. If we've got if that's a dead end, that you keep it at 32. If you've got something where it's a walkway or pass-through space where there's an opening at the end, you need it at least 36. And it's much better if you can do it at 44. Gives you even more space to be able to get through, because this is still tight at 36. When we're talking about access standards and dealing with wheelchairs, if you've got a dead end at the end of a peninsula, it can be 36. A wheelchair will not be able to go around this, but someone can walk around it. And if you are going to have a walkway space through there, we need to keep that at least 60 inches. All right, seating clearances height-wise, okay? A lot of times there are ways to circumvent some of these distances of overhang. I know that a lot of our countertop companies that we work with are doing steel braces that can go out that are flat that let us overhang these things further. But if you're going to do it beyond these recommendations, I would recommend talking to your countertop installer to make sure that they can do it. If you've got a countertop that's lower than your kitchen countertop work surface, which is typically 36, if you've got an eat-at space that's going to be 30 inches tall, you need about 18 inches to be able to have the plate and everything else on there. If you've got it where it is the same height as the counter at 36 inches, you can cantilever it over at 15 because some of the spaces overlap. So the workspace from over top of the counter and the seating space here, they can kind of overlap each other a little bit. And if you raise it up, they want a minimum of about 12 inches. Each of them should be about 48 inches wide for at least 2 stools. 48's a little tight, it's 2 feet per stool. A lot of times if you've got the swinging ones or the stools that rotate, you need to plan for a little extra space. And if we've got access standards, so again, trying to plan for wheelchairs and things like that, you're looking at 30 to 36 inches for each of the stools, and you want to overhang 17 to 25 inches. That's where you're going to get into some kind of bracing down below, be it a core bowl that can hang here, or again, a steel plate that can stick out, or a steel brace that can stick out and attach from the cabinet out underneath the countertop. All right, main sink placement. If the kitchen only has one sink, we kind of want it adjacent or across from the cooking surface and the refrigerator. Again, going back to that work triangle. If we can keep the sink in the middle, it's usually better because the sink is usually the primary space, and you're going then between the range or the cooking surface and between the refrigerator. So if we can put it in the center, that's the better place to go. When we talk about access standards for using the sink, the diagram that's on the right-hand side gives you the dimensions for what we really need. What we're talking about when this cabinet steps back is making sure that a wheelchair can get in there. And if these pipes have hot water that's going down through them, someone sitting in a wheelchair is not going to burn themselves on the water that's going through those pipes. Number 11, the sink landing areas. There's a lot of slides in here about landing areas and the combinations of them. So we may need to get into some questions about this later. I think, and Debbie, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that the slide presentation is available to anyone that's coming. So I know you guys, I see some of you taking notes, but remember that you'll have access to this, so you'll have all the standards given to you. All right, with landing areas. So landing areas, workspace on either side of the sink. We want to include at least 24 inches on one side and 18 to the other. When you're talking about access standards, so you may be looking at a lowered sink for somebody that's in a wheelchair. You again want to give them the larger of the two to one side of the sink and still give them more space on the other side, even if it's higher. A lot of us have gone into, I think of the 1960s split levels, where they always did this design where the sink was tucked in the corner, underneath a window, and the space to get into this sink gets really tight. I know a lot of us are designing in more corner sinks. They have their own issues to them, but if you're going to keep this particular layout, the recommendation is to make sure you've got a filler and you've got 3 inches worth of space coming out of that 90-degree turn before you put the sink in there. A lot of the sinks can fit into a cabinet that's smaller than 30 inches, but you really need to give yourself that 30 inch so that there's play to put that sink in there and also to be able to access it. When we're talking about an approach for a person in a wheelchair, again, you need that 24 inches of countertop frontage from the center line of the sink to be able to get them in there and be able to actually use it. Preparation space around the sink. So if we're talking about preparation space, we want at least 36 inches to one side that's 24 inches deep. That's going to be your most common prep space in any kitchen, where people are just doing all of their cutting of vegetables, washing of things, whatever prep work they need to do before, starting to cook a meal. When you talk about access standards, they want to make sure that you've got a section of countertop that's 30 inches wide, and it either has some kind of knee space that they can pull up to. In this first example, they're giving you a 30-inch wide open space that the wheelchair can pull in, and it's a little lower counter. In the bottom one, they're talking about potentially a removable sink cabinet. They say sink cabinet just because it's usually lighter. It doesn't have all of the adaptations of things that can go into the cabinets, and that there's a finished floor so that you can move it out. Something like this is really great in terms of thinking about resale, because the cabinetry, if you've at least got it, you can put it in for somebody that's not thinking about access, or they don't have a wheelchair need, but it then can look like a finished kitchen, when that cabinet is slid back in. Number 13 is the dishwasher placement. So we want the dishwasher to be within 36 inches of the main sink, preferably to the side of it rather than behind you. And we want 21 inches of standing space between the edge of the sink and the dishwasher and counter. And so when we get into these corner sink applications, I'm going to jump to that as a first part, we want to make sure that you've got 21 inches from the center of the sink over to where that dishwasher is going to come down. With this measurement, that typically means that this cabinet is either going to be a 15 or an 18 that fits in here. And then that gives you clear space to be able to stand. And then as you're doing the dishes, turn around and put it behind you if you have to. This is the more common, where you've got a dishwasher either to the right or to the left. And then if you've got a U-shaped kitchen like this, you've got your standing space here. We'd still like to see you have 21 inches on the opposite side of it. So again, somebody else could get in, be putting away silverware or something like that. If we were dealing with access standards, we're looking to raise this dishwasher up. So here we've got a counter space that's diagrammed at 34 inches, even if it's at 36. 34 is better for access, but we're raising up that dishwasher by 6 inches because how many of us have to lean down if that door is down? One thing that isn't taken into account, and this is some of the advancements we've made in appliances. So there are dishwasher drawers and things like that that can avoid that somebody in a wheelchair can easily access the appliance a little bit better than one that has a fold down door. Waste receptacles. We talk about having at least 2 waste receptacles because in every jurisdiction, especially around here, we now recycle. Some of the jurisdictions ask you to separate even the recycling. So that's why we say a minimum of 2. And we want to locate at least 1 near the main sink and a second one around there for recycling. Again, a lot of the cabinet companies have a lot of different options for how you can do that. The double trash here, a lot of times is in an 18. You've got a tall trash here that uses a full height door. And then this is one where they've got a cap that goes on the sink and you can just scrape your vegetable cuttings and things like that into a trash can, and then this drops down from it. So those are some of the options that are available for waste receptacles. Auxiliary sinks. So if you've got an auxiliary sink, a bar sink, a prep sink, something like that, you want to make sure that you've got at least 18 inches to one side and 3 inches as a minimum at the end. Usually we like to have landing space on both sides of the sink. So if you can give a little more on this side, that's always better, but 3 is the minimum. And if we're planning for access, we want to make sure that we've got knee space at or adjacent to the auxiliary sink. So in this case, the reason that they are allowing 3 is because someone could pull up in a wheelchair here and access the sink to the side. Refrigerator landing areas. Okay, so when you're going to the refrigerator, you want to pull stuff out of it. You want to make sure that you've got a space that you can put things down on. So what their guideline says is that we want at least 15 inches of landing area on the handle side of the refrigerator, or on either side of a side-by-side or a French door refrigerator, or 15 inches of landing space that's no more than 48 inches behind us. So that's either, this would be, that's the handle side. You can see that teeny tiny little handle there. So 15 inches here. If you're 48 inches behind, you need 15 inches there. And if you've got a French door, the preference would be that you put it on both, but if you can get it on one or the other, that's great. If you've got an under cabinet fridge, if you can put it right above, that's perfect. You usually have counter right above it, so that satisfies that guideline. And if we've got access standards, we want to just make sure that we've got clear space in front of the refrigerator for approach. Cooking landing surfaces. Okay, I said that backwards. Cooking surface landing areas. In the cooking surface, there are a lot of times we see this application that we see in the middle of this slide where the range is slammed right up against a wall. This is our least desirable configuration. That's not to say that sometimes it has to happen. If it does, then this kind of application, we want to make sure that you got to check your manufacturer's instructions and the local codes to make sure it can happen. But you also want to make sure that there's something fireproof that you've put on this wall, either a piece of stainless steel, some ceramic tile, things like that. The challenge to doing this is that in an emergency situation, or when you've got a pot boiling over or something like that, you have no place to be able to pull that pot off of the stove to one side. We usually like to have it where if you have an emergency, you can pull it off on both sides. So that's the point of why we have these landing areas. So their recommended guideline is that you've got 12 inches of landing surface on one side, 15 on the other. They should be at least 16 inches deep, not usually too difficult because our cooking surface is typically 24 inches deep or a little shy of that. But they're thinking that, in an application where it's up against a wall, you're probably going to have a utensil jar or salt and pepper shakers or your spices or your oils. So they're accounting for those kinds of things too. If you've got a cooking surface on an island or on a peninsula, we want to make sure that you've got at least 9 inches behind, which means that's why we want to make that overhang a little bit deeper, especially if people are sitting here, so that you've got room that, again, something can get pushed off if need to be, and it's not going to hurt anybody behind it. When we talk about access standards, they're looking for us to lower the cooktop surface, so create an area that's lowered, have that 12 inches and 15 inches on one or the other side of the cooking surface. and lower it down to at least 34 inches. Here, what we're talking about in this is that when you have a cooking surface, a lot of times they're going to have to be recessed into a cabinet, all the mechanics of it. So make sure that you've got something that's going to hide those mechanics, and it's open underneath so that a wheelchair can pull up to it. If you've got it as a range situation where there's an oven down below it, the wheelchair will come in beside it, so it'll be adjacent access to the cooking surface. Number 18, talking about the cooking surface clearances and clearance above. So this is really, I've gotten snagged on this a couple times, and my first voice before I ever go to the NKBA standards is to go to my manufacturer's recommendations of the cooking surface that I'm looking at. Because some of them, depending on, especially if you're talking about gas, have certain DTUs that they pull out, put out, and you want to make sure that you're following their recommendations as far as how much space you're leaving between the cooking surface and whatever you're doing above, okay? The recommendation is 24. It's usually 30 inches by code as a minimum, and you can reduce it down if your manufacturer says that, that you can have that above it. When you're talking about a microwave, again, check those recommendations to make sure that whatever heat's coming off of here, the amount of heat is coming off of here, can be handled by the microwave above it. Cooking surface ventilation. So we're going to provide correctly sized ducted ventilation systems for all cooking surfaces. I laugh at this. The recommended minimum is 150 CFMs. Most all of us and a lot of our clients are looking at these ventilation systems that can pull 1,200 CFMs or 900 CFMs, cubic feet per minute, which means that you are looking at really pulling a lot of heat or a lot of smell or a lot of odor out of the space. When you get into something that's going to pull more than 400 CFMs, all in our jurisdictions around here, we're going to have to provide makeup air and gravity dampers to be able to, whatever air is getting sucked out, you're adding it back to the house, so you're not creating a negative pressure within the house. With this one, they'd like you to either, if you're backing up to an exterior wall, vented directly to the outside. In this one, it's a downdraft system where it's coming down and out. And here, if you're not going to do a system that comes out through the wall, make sure you go all the way up and through the roof and out, okay? Vent controls for anyone, especially as far as access standards, should be placed at somewhere between 15 and 44 inches above the floor. There are a lot of these hood manufacturers now that make remote controls, which are great when you're looking at somebody that needs access to these things. More cooking safety issues is that we're not going to locate the cooking surface underneath an operable window. You can't have window treatments above that, above a cooking surface, because they're obviously going to be flammable. They say you can use non-flammable materials, but the recommendation is don't. I know that a couple years ago in Montgomery County, I got caught where we did a situation here where it was a fixed window, and we did it, and the trim around it was wood, and they made us remove that trim and do a non-combustible material all around it, even though it was wider than the cooking surface. So by code locally, I think it's a little more stringent than what we have here as our NKBA standards. Also, recommendation to make sure that there's a fire extinguisher located near the exit of the kitchen, away from the cooking equipment, but easy enough that you can grab. And they recommend that any commercial cooking appliances not be installed in residential kitchens. And there are enough of the commercial look to our residential appliances that most of our clients can get that commercial look with a residential grade appliance, okay? Microwave placement. So microwave is considered, you have to use, consider the user's ideal heights, and everybody varies on that one. They talk about if you're going to put it on a shelf here, that it should be about 54 inches above the floor. For somebody that's really short, that's not going to work. For somebody that's really tall, they can get to it, but that may still not be the best placement. Here they're showing us a built-in microwave down below, and we want it at least 15 inches off the floor. A A lot of times now, this one I think is drawn as an application where it had a door, but I know we've got the microwave drawers that are used a lot underneath. And that's a good application, but again, keep it up off the floor if you can. And if we're going to go ahead and put it into a cabinet, again, keep those controls about 46 to 48 inches off the floor so somebody can, that is in a wheelchair can access them. Microwave landing area, very similar to that of a cooking surface. It's about 15 inches wide and 16 inches deep, either above it, below it, or to the side of it. Oven landing areas. Okay, so with an oven, different than a cooking surface, we are still looking for 15 inches of landing space next to it. So if these are our double ovens over here, we've got landing space next to it. You're taking that hot pie out of the oven. You want to be able to put it right back down. Again, no more than 48 inches across if we're going to have to turn around and put it on an island. A lot of times that happens if you've got a wall of cabinets, tall cabinets on one side. And so you want to be able to still have a surface behind you that you can pull something out. If you're basting the turkey, you have to have a surface to put that down on, that kind of thing. If the oven is down below, you've got a countertop that flies over the top of it. So you've got the surface there. And if we're looking at access standards where an oven may be higher in a cabinet here, this is with a side open, you would have the countertop to the next of it, to the side of it. All right, combining landing areas. So if two landing areas are adjacent to one another, determine the new minimum by taking the longer of the two requirements and then adding 12. So in our example here, our cooking surface landing spaces, we were talking about 15 inches on one side and 12 inches on another. If it's next to a sink, so you're in a run of cabinets, if you can imagine all of these slammed together, right? You then have your cooking and cleanup sink, which we said 24 or 18 on one side. And then the refrigerator over here, we said 15 was on one side. So what we're doing is we're looking at the combination of these two, and the larger of these two numbers is 24. So we're going to bring that 24 down and add 12 to it. So we don't have to hit this 15 anymore because we've got it with the 24 over here, and we're giving them 36 on this side. Same thing over here. The larger of the two is 24. That's larger than 18, 15, or 12. So we'll do the 24 and the 12. So we have now a sink with 36 inches of landing space on the right and 36 inches of landing space on the left that meets the guideline standards. Okay, counter space. What we're looking at here is 158 inches of counter, 158 inches of counter that's 24 inches deep with 15 inches of clearance above is needed to accommodate all the uses. So that's the general guideline that we're shooting for in terms of a kitchen. Built-in garages can be counted in the countertop dimensions, but they may interfere with your landing areas. So if, for example, you were doing a appliance garage in the corner, things like that, you can count it in your dimensioning of inches, but it may interfere with if you're going to calculate landing spaces and overlap those kinds of things. If you've got at least, the access standard is that we would like to offer at least 2 work counter surface heights. So one at 28 to 36 and another at 36 to 45. I don't often see this in many of the kitchens that I go into. And it is one of the questions that I always ask of a client is, do they have any special needs? Do they have any special desires, such as a baker? It's a lot easier to roll out a pie crust on a 30-inch counter than it is a 36. Some people that matters to, some people it doesn't. So it's always a question I ask in terms of when we're designing a kitchen. Countertop edges, we're just always looking to avoid a sharp corner. I can't tell you how many times you come around the corner, you clip a hip, it always like hurts and gives you a bruise that's there for days. So whether you do a rounded corner or you do a clipped corner, do something to soften that curve or soften that corner as you're thinking about your countertops. Storage. So I'm not going to go through all of these things because the diagrams are on here, but when they talk about storage, the National Kitchen and Bath Association divides kitchens into 3 different sizes. So they talk about a small kitchen being less than 150 square feet, a medium kitchen being between 151 and 350 square feet. And a large kitchen is any kitchen that has more than 350 square feet. And so their guideline is to provide, certain amount of total shelf or drawer frontage for each one of those. And these are the guidelines. And then they go down even further and break it down to how much frontage should you have in wall cabinets, in base cabinets, in drawer space, if you've got pantry space, and any miscellaneous. You can't always follow these. They are guidelines, so you do your best to just make sure that you're providing those things. If you're working with your client to figure out where everything is stored as you're designing things, a lot of times you'll hit these things intuitively because you'll be asking them, where are you going to store your wraps, your Tupperware, your pots and pans, what are they going in? And as you're laying out the kitchens, you're asking all of those questions and working with them to determine where those things are going to be stored so that these total of inches are hit in your planning. And down at the bottom, it gives you your formula to calculate that frontage. So it's cabinet width in inches times the number of shelves and drawers times the cabinet depth in feet. And that gives your shelf and drawer frontage inches. Okay, so more storage standards as far as when you're getting into access. When you have somebody that's going for a forward reach, an unobstructed forward reach, you want to make sure that that storage is somewhere between 15 inches off the floor and 48 inches off the floor in height, because that's what they can reach. If you're doing a side reach, you are going anything that's 10 to 24 inches deep, although the back of the 24 can be very difficult to reach, and 34 inches to 46 inches high in maximum height. A lot of that's going to vary on the user. So make sure you take into account the user, because someone that's very short and in a wheelchair will never reach this top corner that's 24 inches deep and 46 inches tall. And if you have obstructed reach, meaning you've got a counter or something that's coming out, but they can have a forward approach to it, you can go, it's a little lower, it's 44 inches tall, but it can be 20 to 25 inches deep. Storage at the sink. So thinking about storage that you've got around the sink, we're always going to have our dishwasher in there. So what we want to have is we also want to have 72 inches worth of storage around the main sink. And that could be in base cabinets here on an island. It could be base and wall cabinets up here. It could be base cabinets and part of the pantry. It could also, well, this is on an island, sorry about that. And this is on a base cabinet that is up against a wall. So here you've still got, it's basically the same. It's just a matter of if this is overhanging and you've got a little bit more counter space here. And again, 400 inches for a small kitchen, 480 for a medium, and 560 for a large. If you're looking at access standards, we want to plan storage of frequently used items, again, between that 15 and 48 inches above the floor. Corner cabinet storage. There have been so many things that have come out. This doesn't even touch the beginning of it. But what they have in their guidelines are make use of that corner, if at all possible. Don't make it be a dead corner. So the options that they're showing is we've got lazy Susans we can do. A lot of them have an angle front. I know that there's plenty of them that you also can have the pie cut, where it's more of a 90-degree triangle, but it still has a lazy Susan in there. You could do here where it's the top right, where it's just open storage, where there's no door in the corner, but you have storage in the corners. We've got one in the bottom left where it's got a half of a tray roll, that swings out. I know there's also a different kind that's got more of a kidney shape where the whole tray comes out, but it utilizes this back corner. And if you've got a peninsula situation, you can have a cabinet here that would open into the kitchen, a cabinet here that opens into a kitchen, and then you can actually stick a cabinet in that back corner, but it faces out. So you still get use of that corner space for storage, but it's on the other side of the peninsula. Electrical receptacles. We've got codes that we meet. They don't touch, NKBA doesn't touch on this too much, but they do say that we do need GFI protected, well, that's code. GFI protection is required on all receptacles servicing countertop surfaces within the kitchen. I know we need them within, every 2 feet, and we need them on islands. And, the inspectors are coming around and checking that we're still designing those in. Lighting. So in addition to general lighting required by code, every work surface should be well illuminated by appropriate task lighting. A lot of times we talk about 3 different levels of lighting. You've got your task lighting, which is the under cabinet lighting here. That's usually on either 1 or 2 switches as it's shown here. That's going to light your counter surfaces so that as you're standing at the counter, you're not throwing a shadow over top of what you're doing. The second level is general lighting, which could be the recessed lighting that you're putting throughout the kitchen. Or if your client doesn't like recessed lighting, a lot of times there's decorative fixtures that you can put in there that are just going to give you some overall lighting to the room. And then there is what we call decorative lighting. It's decorative and task as well. So for example, you could put a recessed light right over top of the sink, or you could do a pretty pendant light right in front of the sink that's lighting that surface so that you've got light right over top of the sink. The other place that we see a lot of that is over top of peninsulas or over top of islands. A lot of times they're switched separately so that you're just illuminating that surface. Code says that at least 1 wall switch controlled light has to be provided at an entrance into the space, and that window or skylight area of 8% of the total square footage of the kitchen is required. So somewhere in there, if at all possible, we need natural light. Those, I did go through a little faster than I thought. Those are the 31 guidelines from the NKBA. What kind of questions do you guys have? I'm going to leave the slideshow up so I can flip back and forth if you guys have questions. Ooh, dead silence. It's crickets. At least pop up and say hi to me then.
Hi, hello. It was nice session.
Hi.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Do you are you a designer? Have you designed any of this new?
Good.
Is everything on?
Yeah, we hooked it up.
Fancy.
No
Like
questions?
way early on. Everybody was still.
Yeah.
I have a question, Connie.
All right.
The suggestion for raising the dishwasher,
Yes.
have you done that? And do you have any good ideas for the space underneath, or is it just dead space, or what?
I can't say that I personally have done it because I am not a fan of that look, because I think that the space at top of it for someone that's got access or that needs access to it, it's great for access, but it makes the countertop above very difficult to use. So I usually recommend a different type of appliance, like a dishwasher drawer or something like that. I have seen it done tastefully, however, and a lot of times what they will do is they will do a shallow drawer underneath the dishwasher so that you could store trays or, cookie sheets or something like that, because it's not a super deep drawer that can fit underneath.
Right, because of the plumbing, I assume.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. I just remember when I was pregnant, I thought, dang, I wish this thing were higher. and I've been thinking ever since, if I do my kitchen over, I'm going to raise that up. But what would I do underneath? And yes, of course, the counter would look weird. So maybe drawers are for me at some future.
Well, that's an option. But if it's you and it's standing, then you have more. You're not in a wheelchair, or you may. I don't know.
No, I'm not. No.
But you at least have the opportunity. A higher counter there potentially could be used a little more efficiently. It's more that if you're sitting in a wheelchair to try to reach up to the higher counter that's above the dishwasher is difficult. So there are trade-offs to all of these things.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Do we have any more questions?
There were a couple things that came through the chat. I couldn't see what they were.
Oh, they were, hi, great job, Cindy. A lot of great information. Awesome, Cindy. Great job, Cindy. Thanks, Cindy. And thank you, Cindy.
Oh, well, thank you guys.
How about that?
I like that.
All right. Well, Going once, going twice. Any more questions? Well, that was fantastic. As always, Cindy, you're always a great presenter. We appreciate it so much. And we are going to, did you stop share your screen?
I did.
Okay, so we have another sponsor video we would like to thank. If I can just get some help here to help me figure out how to do that. All right, bear with me 1 second. Sorry. All right, let's try this. And here now a moment from our sponsor. Make sure you got a slideshow view. Can you see it? Sorry.
We're going back through all the slides.
No, we don't want to do that. Here. Let's hold up screen sharing. Oh, here, let's have screen share. All righty, let's just do that.
How is everybody?
Yeah. Okay. There we go.
There's a lot of people here. I'm really excited. I think everybody's, enjoying,
You should
our
just click on the black screen.
Yes. Yeah, I'm pleased with the turnout.
Okay.
Debbie's whispering. Thank God for Natalie. Natalie's over here.
All right, here we go.
But no, it doesn't. No. Hold on a second. Why is this happening?
Can I come over?
Yeah, help us. Okay, so that's the video. Okay, so now you want to do play from current. Hold on, you gotta click on. Okay, now that's what we do. Play from current.
Oh.
And we're not sharing it though.
Oh, shoot.
Okay, we're just gonna go over here and start here.
Y'all are a patient bunch.
Oh,
And we did run throughs.
Share screen.
Sorry, there was a pop-up. No. No, hold on. It was a pop-up email and I clicked on that.
There you go. You got it. Now play from current slide.
From current slide. My laptop, we did it.
For more than 2 decades, Home and Design Magazine has been showing DC area homeowners how remodeling can transform their homes into dream spaces. We publish these home makeover stories in 70,000 copies of Home and Design Magazine every other month. Our annual idea book offers sound advice and inspiring examples for creating a design vision and getting it done. Chesapeake Views stirs the imagination for everyday living, vacationing, or retiring in the Chesapeake Bay region. Our portfolio book showcases new work by 100 top local architects, interior designers, and landscape architects. The next issue of Home and Design will feature top remodeling projects. Let us know about yours. In fact, in every issue, a design build section shows our commitment to engaging readers with new remodeling stories and products. We hope you'll consider Home and Design as a good source of new clients for your business.
All right.
Our focus on remaking home spaces has never been more relevant than today. At Home and Design, we are pleased to work with remodeling firms of all sizes to help you find your next clients. We have a program for any budget, so please reach out to us by email to sales@homeanddesign.com. That's sales@homeanddesign.com.
All right, thank you, Home and Design. All right, let's see. Where's my little thing? There we go. There.
For more than
Keep
2
going.
decades, Home and Design.
Woohoo! All right, so now we are finished with this particular course, they will take a break and we will be back into the expo room. Thank you to our sponsors again. And remember, and we have lots and lots of door prizes, so make sure you visit all the expo rooms. The more you visit, the more chances you have to win. And time for a break. See you all soon. Now what do I do?